Absolutely.
You know, we've been talking about this topic for some time. We just have been kind of, I guess, delaying and pushing it back. But it's something we really need to talk about.
Absolutely.
So tomorrow will be 1 month since R. Kelly was convicted of all charges in New York relating to his case involving racketeering, sexual exploitation of children, things like forced labor, violation of the Mann Act. So after more than a month, the case has been settled, but is there more to this story? Has the truth come out? And is there another chapter to the R. Kelly story? Or are there many chapters remaining to the R. Kelly story? And you know, what's interesting is, in this case, the Black community seems to be divided. Some, it seems like the overwhelming support is for R. Kelly. Many people think that this trial never should have come before a jury. That, you know, quite frankly, people think that these women, most of all of them, are lying, and that for monetary reasons they had elected to come forward and to testify in open court against R. Kelly. I mean, what is the truth? You know, there's so many conflicting facts and so much information has come out since trial. Opinions were, of course, formed before the trial began, and some of those opinions have subsequently changed. Mm-hmm. But, you know, what do we know? Do we know any more post-trial than we did pre-trial? You know, is R. Kelly a vicious sexual predator, or is he a man who was just railroaded by the system? I guess you have to sort of reach your own conclusion. And, you know, you have to do so based on fact, not what you heard, not what you think.
Right.
And definitely not on his celebrity, you know,
right.
Because just because you're a celebrity and you have money and fame doesn't mean you're a good person. Doesn't mean you will not commit a crime. But, you know, what is the truth? You know, I've talked to many people who have followed this case and followed R. Kelly's career. Mm-hmm. And as I said, most of them are saying that, you know, these women are all lying. Well, I did some research before coming on air, and it looks like at least 8 women came forward, and there were others. It looks like, from what I saw from New York Times, about 45 witnesses testified during the trial. So the question is, were all 45 people who testified, were they all lying? Are all of these women lying? Do they all have a financial objective? Are they all looking to file civil suits against R. Kelly and to enrich themselves? Or are some of these allegations true? So, TP, I know you know R. Kelly personally. So, having met him, having talked to him, do you think he's capable of some of this stuff?
I think he's capable of having sex with underage girls. Yes. Yes. I think he's capable of that. A lot of these other things that he's been convicted of, I think he was unjustly convicted of. I am a fan of R. Kelly's. I respect R. Kelly as an artist. As a human being, he has made some poor decisions, and you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
And he was surrounded with a bunch of yep and bobbleheads and enablers. Now, a lot of women, just bear with me here for a moment. When you are called the king of R&B, when you are a superstar, not just a star, not a celebrity, not a ghetto celebrity, but a superstar, and you've worked with everybody from Michael Jackson on down, okay? Mm-hmm. It didn't matter if it was R&B or pop or rock, and you revived careers. You know, you kept Celine Dion relevant, R. Kelly. You made Charlie Wilson relevant. You made Ron Isley and the Isley Brothers relevant to a whole new audience. Mm-hmm. You know, and the list goes on and on and on, right? You are a superstar, right? You're going to encounter a lot of fans, and you are going to be exposed to, as a male artist, superstar, you're going to have more females attracted to you and following you than you're going to have men. Men will be your fans and they'll follow you, but not as closely as the women, right? And I do think that because of that, you know, if you're on the road and these girls want to meet you and they want to get an autograph and get a picture, R. Kelly wasn't the one going out there and getting those girls and bringing them backstage. He wasn't the one going to get those girls and bring them to the after party and to the hotel room. He wasn't the one doing that. There was other people doing that, you know, and they were doing that for favors their own self.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, on the other side of that coin, I think a lot of these women came and testified against R. Kelly because they had axe to grind. Because nobody wants to be a one-night stand. Nobody. And a lot of those young ladies wanted to be in relationships. They wanted to be Mrs. R. Kelly. One thing I know about from being in the music industry and being around all that stuff is every time these crooners get on the stage, right, no matter what their personal life was like, they always came off as they were single and available.
Right.
Because they wanted every woman in that audience to think that they had a chance.
Well, that's the persona they want to create. Yeah.
Right. Because they want them to go out and buy those records and everything else. Right. So most of those young women bought into that persona. So they thought they had a chance. So they didn't realize that that chance was going to be only for the night. Not even for the night, for just a few minutes or an hour or two. You know, so a lot of those women didn't get the satisfaction that they wanted. And they began to feel used by R. Kelly. So that's why a lot of them testified against him.
Well, okay, you said that you believe R. Kelly is capable of having sex with underage girls.
Yes.
Okay. So now we go back as far as 1994. R. Kelly is alleged to have married Aaliyah when she was 15. And not long after that, there was the infamous video that came out that shows R. Kelly with what appears to be an underage girl.
Well, look, I can go back before 1994 when we were on the road. I remember he opened up on that Gerald Levert private line tour, and he had his own bus. It was R. Kelly in public announcement, and they had their own bus, and he always wanted to go to the mall. He always wanted his bus to go drop him to the mall. And who hangs out in the mall?
Right.
And so, was he attracted to young girls then? Well, he was a young man then.
Right.
You know, he was in his 20s. Right. But there were signs then that he was attracted to young girls. So, is he capable of sleeping with young girls? Yes. Yes.
Okay,
so like I said, I can go back before 94, before Aaliyah. He wanted to be around young girls because his fan base wasn't grown women at that time. His fan base was young women.
Well, excuse me, but going strictly with Aaliyah for a moment, you know, it's still somewhat up in the air if there was a marriage between R. Kelly and Aaliyah. Excuse me. Some camps are saying no, this never happened, while others are saying yes, R. Kelly did marry Aaliyah, that he forged a birth certificate in order to show her as being at least 18 years of age, and that at that time he believed she was pregnant. And in order to avoid prosecution for statutory rape, he wanted to marry her simply because a wife cannot testify against her husband, right? So, of course, you know, is there definitive proof that there was such a relationship where the two got married?
No.
Okay. And then the other one is the video, right? Now this girl, and I saw the video, this girl looked to be underage, right? She did not look of age to consent to sex. Now, nowadays, you have to be extremely careful of who you become involved with. Following the emergence of the Me Too movement, there's so many changes as it relates to social contacts, particularly with the opposite sex. You have to be extremely careful what you say, how you say it. And now the law says if you are engaged in sexual activity with your partner, and midway through, your partner says, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
You must stop.
The law says you must stop.
Yes.
Or now this is rape.
Yes.
So for R. Kelly, you know, like we were talking off air, and you know, a lot of people think that what brought R. Kelly down was the video Surviving R. Kelly. But maybe
reality TV show, yes.
Well, maybe it goes back before that to the 90s, you know, with Aaliyah, with this girl, and I can't remember her name, with this girl who is in the video. And because realistically, this was a young Black girl, I guess from Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
If R. Kelly,
Sparkle's niece.
Okay. Well, let's just say R. Kelly had, say, a young white girl, a young Caucasian woman from the suburbs of Chicago. And he brought her to his home. And he's seen prior to this woman, this young girl arriving, setting up the camera, getting the perfect angle, things of that nature. If this was a young Caucasian girl, say 14, 15 years old, and this video had been leaked, do you think R. Kelly would have gotten the same latitude that he got from the Black community? You think he would have got that same sort of latitude from the white community?
No.
Right. I think that R. Kelly would have been lucky to make it to trial.
Yes.
I think because this girl would have been cast as some innocent, poor teenager
mm-hmm.
who was enamored with this superstar, this megastar,
mm-hmm.
and who went there in search of an autograph or
a photo,
something, right? Some
mm-hmm.
memorabilia
mm-hmm.
that she could take back home. This poor girl had no idea that this individual was a sexual predator who would take advantage of her. Well, for the young woman in the video, I don't know if she was received that same way within the Black community.
No, she was viewed as a willing participant.
And at her age, could she be a willing participant?
Legally, no.
Right. So that may have been the genesis of R. Kelly's downfall.
But I don't think so. You know why?
Mm-hmm.
The Black community has swept sexual predators under the carpet forever. Everybody got that creepy uncle, that cousin, that brother, that stepbrother, the father, mm-hmm. you know, and as a community, we don't talk about sexual assaults and predators within the family.
Well, we don't really talk about sex too much.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you know, why would anybody talk about this? You know, why would anybody talk about this, Ron? You know?
Well, you know, I think that R. Kelly, what happened with Aaliyah, what happened with this young lady was prior to the Me Too movement. Well, when the Me Too movement became such a powerful force, you can no longer ignore it. Well, you can no longer say, hey, just don't leave the kids home with Uncle Leroy. You can't do that anymore. Right. Now, laws have been put in place where people are obligated to make reports to the police, to social services, to this agency, to that agency.
Yes.
So that the idea is to prevent people from slipping through the cracks, particularly young people, children, right? The idea is to protect them. And is it a good idea? In theory, yes. Of course, everything in this country is to the extreme. You know, there's no balance.
But you do realize that the Me Too movement has been weaponized. It was weaponized, and if you look closely, it's really lost its steam. After Harvey Weinstein went down and you arrested R. Kelly, you got your two big stars. You got your elderly, dirty old white man, and you got your dirty old black man. You got Bill Cosby, who was subsequently freed, right? In my opinion, the Me Too movement has lost its steam because it's been weaponized and it's been used in a negative sense, especially since what happened with Bill Cosby.
You know what? I think that there is still quite a bit of momentum with the Me Too movement. Because if you think about it, the former governor of New York just had to step down because of allegations made by a number of aides and other women around him. And
But I don't think that was really the Me Too movement that did him in. I think that was more of politics that did him in.
Well,
as opposed to just the Me Too thing.
It's probably a combination of both. You know, because and I know we're getting a little off topic, but I think that it is possible that Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, was positioning himself for a run in 2024.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I remember at the height of COVID crisis, when New York was the epicenter.
He was America's governor.
He was America's governor. And he was on TV every day. Giving these updates.
Yep.
And a lot of people were paying attention to Governor Cuomo. You have to keep in mind, Cuomo, the name Cuomo, there's a long legacy going back to his father.
Yep.
Right? Who was, I think, a 3-term New York State governor. So it brought him down. And I think that there are other dominoes that are going to fall. And if you think about it, the guy who was in charge of Fox News, Roger Ailes, had to step down.
And then he died.
So this movement has still some momentum left. You know, I mean, you mentioned Weinstein, you mentioned Cosby, but there was also Epstein, right? And we can add Cuomo to the list and others going back years to back as far as Al Franken, right? Who was a popular senator from Minnesota.
And an actor.
Who was forced to step down because some pictures had surfaced. So it's
saw him this morning on CNN.
Al Franken.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, he's back in the public eye now. You know, because this has pretty much been forgotten in some areas. You know, others, they're going to hold it against him forever.
But you know what? In my opinion, I think R. Kelly's going to sit down in jail for maybe a maximum of 5 years before the Supreme Court looks at his case and throw out his conviction. You know, because I think a lot of the charges, the racketeering charges, and what is that? The Mann Act, and all that other stuff. A lot of those things he didn't do.
Well, I'll tell you something. And as we said off air, the RICO statutes is kind of like a catch-all, right? If you can't get an individual or a group on, say, murder or rape or some sort of heinous crime like that, you use the RICO statutes, which gives you much greater legal latitude, right? In terms of the Mann Act, the Mann Act is specifically about transporting women across state lines for sex.
And did he do it?
Did he do that? Now that's a good question. That
was things that the enablers did. Did he do that? No. And here's the other thing. What about these parents, right? You know, a lot of these parents, just like Aaliyah's parents, right? A lot of people, you know, don't talk about this because she passed away and out of respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, these showbiz parents, especially of females, they know what's going to happen to these daughters, and they turn a blind eye to it. There's another very famous young lady who father knew that Case was taking his daughter in that trailer to have sex with her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he knew it was going to happen, and he allowed it to happen. She was only 14 years old
Mm-hmm.
at the time. You know, and a lot of these showbiz parents allow these things to happen.
Well, you know something? Now, a lot of people are saying the parents should be indicted. However, it's difficult simply because how do you prove the parents knew? Do you have corroboration that the parents knew or should have known?
Okay, Ron, let me ask you a question.
Here's the thing, right? Prior to this most recent conviction, now he was brought up before, and of course he was acquitted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was it known in Chicago and around the nation that R. Kelly was or is a sexual predator, right?
Well,
was that known?
There are people from Chicago who said he was,
Mm-hmm.
that he did like younger women.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, with most men, the only thing we like old is money. And it's sad to say that, but when you are a superstar, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can look at Mick Jagger, for
Right.
instance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rolling Stones. If the Rolling Stones make a song today and they do a music video, are they going to have 70-year-old women in the video?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So that's my point.
Mm-hmm.
As a superstar, right? He was 30 years old, right?
Right.
But the 30-year-old women were too old to be in the music video.
Right.
So the 20-somethings and the late teenagers was the ones in the videos. They were the video vixens.
Mm-hmm.
He got older and his audience kind of grew up with him, but the people around him, the new artists that was trying to break into the industry, are younger.
Right.
The video vixens are younger. You know what I mean? So he's going to be around younger people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they are more vulnerable. And because he has a penchant for young women, he is going to touch them. Just like Mr. Biggs told me in the video. Kelly, don't you touch it.
Well, here's the thing. Okay. So, yes, R. Kelly, as a megastar, has access to women of all ages, all sizes,
That's
all
right.
sizes, all shapes. Okay. But now, does that absolve him of his moral and legal obligation?
No, it does not.
Because
it does not.
You know, let's think about it.
He needed his ass kicked.
Right. Because if you have a child who is 13, 14 years old, he's going, and this little girl's going over to play with R. Kelly's daughter, right? The parent probably has a reasonable belief that my child is going to be safe in that house, that R. Kelly, you know,
You're right.
even though he makes raunchy music, that
Right.
is a persona that is not carried over into his home. At home, he's a family man.
But you know, Ron,
Mm-hmm.
See, if there was an accusation of the Michael Jackson type of accusations,
right,
that he was sexually assaulting young girls that came to his house, like you said, to be with a sleepover with his daughter,
mm-hmm.
or something like that, then that's something different.
Right.
But he never was accused of anything like that. His accusations were these young girls who trying to break into the music industry,
mm-hmm.
you know, and even with Aaliyah, her mother, the Hortons, they knew what they were doing. He was the guy. And if you wanted to hit record in the 90s, it was only coming from one place,
mm-hmm.
Chicago and R. Kelly.
Right.
So what have you got to do to get in the room in the studio with R. Kelly is what you did. All right. And a lot of people turned a blind eye to that stuff. But my point is this. And it ain't right. R. Kelly needed his ass kicked, you know. But unfortunately, Black women tend to have babies at a young age. Unfortunately.
Well, I'll say all women do.
Yes, but the difference is, and don't take this the wrong way, a lot of women let themselves go. You know how they say that they got the snap back. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So she can be 30. How they say the 40 is the new 20 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, back then they wasn't doing that.
Right.
You know, she had that baby at 25, and you know what? She became a roly-poly. You know, she lost her sexiness. So the women that was his age lost their sex appeal, their sexiness, you know? So he was looking at the younger girls because they were young and tender in his eyes. They were the tender morsels. Does it make it right? Hell no. But there was nobody in his camp to tell him, no, don't you touch it. Don't do it.
Well, I think that his situation is similar to Michael Jackson's in the fact that Michael surrounded himself with people who would just say yes, even when it was clear that this was not the best idea. You know, listen, I've never been to Neverland. I don't know what went on in there. But I know as a man, I'm not going to have young children in my bedroom.
No.
You know, I'm married and have children. I'm still not going to have young children in my bedroom. Even if my wife is there, you don't belong in here.
That's right.
So if you are a single man, the last thing you need to have, especially as a celebrity, the last thing you need to have is the air of impropriety.
Mm-hmm.
Having these children in your room is a mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, it's your word against that of a child's, right?
Yes, yes.
And it's very difficult when a child gets on the stand and begins to weep, right? And says, oh, this man did something to me. You know, it strikes a chord with the jury, some of who were parents who envision their child, right? So it makes it very, very difficult.
And then you know another thing that sucked?
What's that?
Yes, I believe that reality TV show took him down, but the man didn't have a jury of his peers either. He did not have a jury of his peers. And I think the jury pool was tainted. You only heard the negative. You didn't hear the positive. You didn't hear the stories of how he helped a lot of these families out of financial ruin.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't hear about all the checks that he was cutting and the families he was taking care of these same women who was now his accusers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because a lot of them became his friends and he treated them like family.
Well,
but you didn't hear that. You know, you didn't hear that side of the story.
Right. Well, you know, typically in a criminal trial, the prosecution, of course, wants to limit the amount of testimony that's given that refutes the evidence that they've developed of guilt, right? So, of course, that's just a tactic that prosecutors are going to employ. But now, if we look at R. Kelly, right, the man, is he the right person to go to battle for? You know, are there other role models who don't have the specter of impropriety, who don't have a video that shows him with a young girl, right, urinating on her, who doesn't have an allegation that he married Aaliyah at 15? You know, we have so many.
You know what he should have done?
What's that?
In my opinion, he should have done like every other athlete and every other rapper. He should have went to the strip club. R. Kelly didn't hang out in the strip clubs.
Right.
He wasn't a fan of that because he liked to be in his comfort zone.
Right.
You know, so he was in his home, or in his studio, in his place. He wasn't out in the street like people think, But had he been like the athletes and the rappers in the strip club, his attraction to the young girl wouldn't have been the same. That's just my opinion.
He might have saved himself some heartache and some legal troubles, possibly by doing that, right? Maybe the best thing would have been for him to do, settle down, get married, and get your freak on at home between you.
He did that.
And your wife.
He did that.
And you know something? Look, we're talking about consenting adults, not children,
right.
Adults. If you want to bring others into your relationship, as long as both partners within the marriage are okay with that, then do it, right? No harm, no foul. Everybody's aware of the situation up front, right? But now you mentioned Black women. So Black women are in a difficult position. If this was someone else, if this was Justin Timberlake, and Justin Timberlake had his entourage going into the inner city of Chicago, picking up young Black girls, taking them out to the suburbs, and having sex with them, and videotaping it, how do you think the Black community would have reacted? Would we have been supportive of Justin Timberlake the way we are supportive of R. Kelly?
We would have been quiet as a church mouse.
I think that we would have been up in arms. We would have been protesting. I think we would have been all over
I don't think
social media. Well, it seems that the perception is different when somebody outside the community does something to one of us, as opposed to when we do it. We tend to look the other way when we do it to one another.
As long as they have celebrity status, we're not doing anything.
Well,
Justin Timberlake has celebrity status, and he was a crossover artist, and everybody loved him. It didn't matter who you were. Everybody loved Justin Timberlake. So guess what? I've heard a lot of women say he can get it. A lot of Black women, Justin can get it.
Right.
So he was accepted in the Black community,
right,
as a superstar, as an artist, and you know what? Nothing would have happened.
But something,
it would have been an honor.
But something, that makes the situation even worse, because something. In this case, in the aftermath of this case, the person who appears to have been
Vanilla Ice would have been a problem.
Right. Well, the person who appears to be the victim in this case is R. Kelly. Right. There are a number of women who came forward to make accusations against R. Kelly. So for them who have come forward, the Black community is saying, the gold diggers, they're just out for monetary gain. They brought down a superstar. For Black women.
Hold on. Let me get that. Hello? You're on the air.
Hey, welcome to the show, Renee. How are you?
Can you hear us? Yeah,
yes, we can hear you.
We hear you.
And thanks so much for calling in. I was telling Terry, we were talking prior to coming on air, and that you had done quite a bit of investigating into this case. So what can you share with us about what you found out about this R. Kelly situation?
Oh, Lord. So let me put the disclaimer out there. Don't kill me. I just believe on the side of right. So, okay, so the last time when I was at the station, roughly 2 years ago, and so my friend and I, we were fairly green, which means we didn't know everything about the case. We just figured that he's 100% innocent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now here we are, fast forward, we realized that, there's some things that we just didn't know. We had a certain level of ignorance. because there were so many twists and turns in this case that we looked at it from a legal perspective and, of course, a moral perspective. So morally, would I want my 18-year-old daughter to date a 50-year-old man? Absolutely not, right? Since we know that the newest case that just came out where the young lady came on and said she's 18 and she married her godfather.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, no way, right? I wouldn't want that because we know that if you're 15, 20 years older, you're more advanced, right? So let me just say that. And plus, you guys know I have a 13-year-old, and so I'm a parent too. But what I found is transfer, and also speaking to the attorney and the parents, and also the victim, and also actually went on a live Instagram with the ex-wife. So here's some of the things that came out of this case. Now we want to know, because everyone's saying where were the parents, right? And we know that you can tell your child any and everything. You can tell them the right thing, and we know they stray, right? So we know that. So one of the first things that I found is that even with these surviving, they were not vetted, right? They were not, and I've said this before that I had one of my friends, she actually worked on the set, and they were not properly vetted, but they were poor, right? So we know that. And then one of the next things is that, which I found to be a little odd. One of the young ladies that were on this, she was hard to me. So she was hard. She was one. I know some of the reporters said, "Well, you sold your daughter to R. Kelly." Well, in order for you to sell, it means that there has to be a buyer, right?
Right.
One of the things, well, you can't say that someone sold. So what ended up happening with that is, and this is, they kind of said that on even Gail case, where they actually wrote a letter. The young lady was 17 years old. She was 3 months from being 18. And the parents signed almost like a permission slip because they didn't emancipate her, because in order to be emancipated, you had to go into, of course, the court. So they did not emancipate her. They signed a letter that basically says that his manager at the time, and the name slips me at the moment, the manager, their daughter can go on tour. So one of the questions that I asked the father was, well, why would you allow your 17-year-old to go on a tour? And he said that the young lady was suicidal. She was in counseling. And the counselor said that was the only thing that would keep her from committing suicide.
But now, Renee, let me just interject this. When you say 17, right? You can join the military at 17, and you can be sent off to a war zone at 17. So now look, legally, and it's kind of crazy, at 17 you can go off and you can defend this country, at least the corporations in this country, but you can't have a drink, you can't smoke a cigarette, you can't have sex, but you could die for this country. So I get what you're saying about why he would send his 17-year-old daughter off, but also keep in mind, you can go to war at 17. But go ahead.
Right. You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. That was my question from a parental perspective. Because for me, there's no way I'm going to tell my daughter, okay, you can go ahead with some entourage, especially for people that I don't know. I'm just way too protective of that. So I asked the parent that, right? And so you're absolutely right. And he said, well, again, she was in therapy, and that was the one thing that kept her from committing suicide. So really, the conversation never came with R. Kelly. Well, I'm going to say R. Kelly, but Robert Sylvester. It didn't come with him. It was the manager. So she actually left, and the FBI pulled the ticket. The parents bought the ticket, and she went. By the time she left, it was 5 months after she turned 18. So, and I say that because I know that was always the question. Your daughter is 17, but does it make it right? Absolutely not. Well, morally, I wouldn't have done that. So she left. And so what they found is, now she was there, I think, 3 to 5 years. What they found was she told her father that she said, look, I was having a good time. I didn't want to come back home. And she even threatened R. Kelly that I'm going to kill myself if you send me back home. Now, what later came out was in testimony, and also there's a video out called President, and it's a documentary. And come to find out is that her father had been, he had been convicted of drugs, and then also early on that he couldn't be around her because he molested her. So he couldn't really be around her anyway, like legally in the house.
But you know something, Renee?
So that was another thing.
But you know something? Mm-hmm. She sounds like a pretty, from our perspective, a poor choice, because what we're dealing with is a young lady who was clearly emotionally disturbed. You know, absolutely. She said that, you know, according to what you discovered, she told her parents, look, if you don't send me with R. Kelly, I'm going to commit suicide. And so they felt pressured to allow her to go. And then years later, she says, hey, if you send me back to my home, I'm going to commit suicide. So
she was extorting everybody.
Right. So she's probably not the best example to use. I mean, because of her emotional state. You know what I mean? I'm sure there were some other witnesses, right? And well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I'm assuming there were some other witnesses who were not in such a fragile emotional state, and who did not have a situation where they came from a, I guess you say, a dysfunctional home. Some of these people and there are a number of women who came forward. There were some of them probably who had, who were better prepared emotionally, who went on trial or who went and testified against R. Kelly. So what can you tell us about some of these other women?
I wish I could really say that. There were 17 Jane Does and 2 John Does. I really wish I could say that there were some that were in a better situation emotionally, but they were not. And the reason why I say that is because the 2 that actually was on the survivors, both of them had come from the same background, except for they were born in 2 different states. One was Atlanta and one was in Baltimore. Same situation. They had another young lady with Seth Martinez. Same situation. So all of
was that the young lady from Florida?
That was Seth Martinez, yes. All of them had the same background. Well, put it this way, they didn't all have the same background as far as the parents, per se like that, but they all came from broken homes.
So
they all did.
But now let's think for a second. If you are someone that is looking to prey upon others, you know, I mean, in the animal kingdom, the animal goes after the prey that is the weakest, that is old, and is the most vulnerable. So for humans, right, we go after, if you're a predator, you're going to go after the weakest link. You're going to go after those people who have, those young ladies rather, who have self-esteem issues, who have things like sexual abuse in their past, women who are vulnerable, right? Is that something that R. Kelly may have been systematically planning or doing for the people around him? Have you found that in your research?
Honestly, I just say it came from both ends, right? I really do think so, because we know that he's had a past with, he was molested by his sister, a neighbor, and a couple of other family members. So yes, I honestly think that went both ways. Absolutely. And they did childlike things, right? So, I mean, as funny as it sounds, it's not really literally funny, but where they went, McDonald's, the happy place, right? That was one of the places they went. Does he love McDonald's? Absolutely. They always went to McDonald's, right? Because growing up, what we found is he and his mother would always go to McDonald's. He loved McDonald's. He loved Christmas. He would do things with them that was really like childlike.
Well,
so mentally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, you know what? We were talking as I was coming into the studio today, and we talked about the video that surfaced that showed R. Kelly involved with this young girl. Now, you said you saw the video, but you really didn't focus in on this young lady. Well, from my recollection of seeing the video, and of course this is over 20, nearly 30 years ago, this young woman looked extremely young. And as a adult male, you have to be extremely careful of who you come in contact with. As a former police officer, I can tell you, ignorance of the law is no defense. So if you believe that this woman is over the age of 18, and you later find out, oh, well, she wasn't, well, I'm sorry, but that is something you have to know before you become sexually involved with this person. But specifically, the fact that there was a scene in the video where R. Kelly urinated on this young lady. And to me, that says something, right? When you do that, that's an indication of a desire to humiliate, to dehumanize, right? So as a Black woman, right? Now you've done the research. What do you think R. Kelly thought of Black women? Keeping in mind that it was his sister, you say, that molested him. So is it possible that R. Kelly has some deep-seated, maybe animosity, anger, and anger issues directed to a Black woman?
I'm not going to necessarily say Black women, because there were Caucasian women, right? And there were women from other ethnic backgrounds. But they all said, and one of the young ladies actually played on a reality show, like the Shah Sunset or whatever, and they all said, and even they had this set of twins, that worked with, they all said that he was 100% gentleman-like. But he did say, I had many women. So if you're in the specific words where if you're not cool, then we can't hang out. But if you want to be cool, then we can hang. So I'm not going to say it was just to Black women, because he did have people that actually worked for him. His testify Bourbon was his long-term manager, and he calls her name in the in a couple of his songs. But I don't think it was just Black women that he did that. And we know that, and you and I talked about it, that, there's people who just write that type of sex. And to kind of take it a step further, we look at this young lady, and yes, rightfully so. First, she was not 14, but it doesn't matter, because even she's 14, 18, doesn't matter, she's still young, right?
Right.
But we look at, this young lady as, okay, she's a kid. But we have to look at the geographic area too, right? And the reason why I said it is because, especially with this case, I've spoken to more than a handful that I wanted to of young ladies in the Chicago area for this place. And let me tell you, even at 45, some of those women can run circles around me. So they're 14, really, it's like 28. They're experienced. Most of them have babies already at 16. And so I say that not because of her age, but if I look at my daughter, our kids that we, know of 13, 14, you're nowhere near the experience level of those young ladies are.
But you know something?
Let me point that out.
See,
I'm sorry?
From the aspect of Black women, right? To me, Black women are in a very difficult situation. Since this trial, in the aftermath of this trial, R. Kelly is viewed as the victim. The Black women who have come forward, they're gold diggers, they're liars. For a Black woman who is coming forth with allegations of sexual violence, sexual harassment, who's going to believe Black women? Who's going to protect Black women? If you go back to the 80s, to the Supreme Court nominations, when Clarence Thomas was up for nomination and he was going through his confirmation hearings, nobody believed this Black woman. Oh, she's just trying to take down a Black man. How do we know? Just the other day here in Pennsylvania, and I don't know this woman's ethnic background, but a woman was raped on a subway train while people watched.
And supposedly videotaped.
Yes, supposedly videotaped. So if you are a woman, who is protecting you? Particularly Black women, who is protecting Black women when, in the case like R. Kelly, these women, nobody believes them.
They were willing participants.
People look at it as, well, R. Kelly is the victim, right? These women are insignificant. It's about, they're just there for the money. But is that the case? And you have a daughter, right? All of us want to feel protected. But in the society we live in, who's protecting Black women? This young lady that was killed by Brian Laundrie, they moved heaven and earth till they found her body.
And they still talking about her.
Right. But there are so many Black women, hundreds of thousands that are missing. Nobody's even looking for them.
And don't even mention the Native American women
Right.
that's missing.
Nobody's looking for them. So for Black women,
So here's the deal,
what are they supposed? What are Black women supposed to do? Mhm.
Right. So here's another one, right? So it's another young lady up there who said every month he would give them $5,000 and then send $5,000 to the parents and then also, or the family, right? Plus they had unlimited access to Uber and public transportation, whatever transportation. He took them shopping, and then Christmas he gave them $10,000. So one of the young ladies, she actually was the hair braider. She said she sued him for $250,000 on top of that. So he kind of settled out of court. But when she spoke up, when the money ran out, even with the parents, all of them, now not just the parents said it, but they had colleagues who said it, they had family members that tweeted and came on and said, no, this wasn't true. That wasn't true what they're saying. So we look at it as there was only one person who really was, they're saying, underage. And what they did was they made her appear like she was younger because she looks younger. But come to find out, yes, they were extorting. You know why? Because their parents got almost $1 million worth of PPP loans. So that's the whole other thing. My thing is, if you a victim, be the victim. But don't become a victim when the money runs out.
But here's the thing now.
Because you were staying in his house.
But also the same can be said of the entourage. So they were there and they were reaping the benefits. Hey, I'm chilling with R. Kelly.
Yep.
I'm in the VIP section. I'm popping bottles. Well, as soon as there's no money, what did the entourage do? They're not there no more.
Oh, they told them.
Exactly. So I mean,
they took the money.
It's not just the women, because he got those hangers on who are saying, yeah, you do what you want to do, whatever you want to do, man, we good with it. But as soon as the verdict was read, all of a sudden, I don't know R. Kelly like that. I mean, yeah, well, he was doing this, he was doing that. That's not what you said when you were out assisting him in bringing these young girls.
But the thing is that was never brought to light. How many of the entourage sampled the dish before R. Kelly got to it?
Right.
Because in most cases, they get to sample it before he do.
And you know something? The problem is that the bullseye is on the guy with the money and the fame.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we have just about run out of time. This is a conversation that Cherry and I have been trying to have for some time, but things happen, and we had to delay it until today. But this is something that I think that we can look into talking about again, because there's so many aspects of this case that have yet come to light. There's a lot of things that, here we are. It's been almost a month now. Tomorrow will be 1 month since his conviction. And what have we learned? Do we know any more, as I said, post-conviction as pre-conviction, right? There's so many allegations floating out there, and what's true, what's not. And, of course, R. Kelly and his legal team is going to try to appeal, understandably so. Is there grounds for appeal?
I think so.
And what are they? And you know what? It would be great if we could have a legal expert come on, and somebody who's who's just as intimately familiar with this case as you are, Renee, to tell us from a legal aspect, does he have a legal leg to stand on, shall we say? But we're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to talk about it further. Hopefully we're going to get to the bottom of this and learn more about what's going on with not just R. Kelly, but our justice system. But go ahead, what were you saying?
Yes. So let me just put this out there too, right? So actually, his attorneys are pretty. They will kind of talk about it. So his lead attorney was Deborah O'Connor. You had Nicole Blank Becker. You have right here in New Jersey, Doug Anton, and you have Steve Greenberg. They're talking to people. So it wouldn't be anything but a phone call to reach out to them. Believe me when I tell you, it's really not that difficult.
Set it up.
So maybe we can set up a phone call.
Set it up, Renee.
Right, where we can talk to them on air, and maybe we can answer some of these lingering questions. So we're going to hopefully move forward with that and bring this information to the people so we can make a pretty fair assessment of R. Kelly. But Renee, I thank you for calling in. Right. And so many others do. But Renee, I thank you for calling in and joining our conversation. And of course, hats off to the Mastermind TP Square for being with me today.
My pleasure.
Oh yeah, it's always, interesting conversation when TP is in the house. But to all the listeners, thank you for joining us tonight, and please continue to support Gynesis Radio. This is a platform that needs to stay independent, needs to stay on the air, because we're going to give you the information you're not going to get from Fox and CNN and HMN. So with that, I thank you all for listening, and good night.